one of the things that we do as CISOs is we've got to gather information. A lot of people call it different things: threat intelligence, um, the looking for threat vectors in your organization. I mean, there's all kinds of different ways of saying it, but you have to gather information. And I started doing a variety of things back many years ago, mostly because I didn't know any better. No one taught me how to be a CISO, so I had to be creative. This was 14, 15, 16 years ago now. And I didn't have a mentor really. I was part of the computer security response team, and so that kind of led into how I did things. But one of the things that I really wanted to do is be able to gather information to be able to make good decisions. One of the things that we covered in the management program I did in college was if you can't measure it, you can't manage it. And I took that to heart, and I do that now even for security related things. If I can't measure it, there's no way for me to manage it. So one of the things that is very simple to do, and I wanted to cover it today since doing a smaller video, a real quick thing, is understanding what you're seeing in your firewall logs or your auth logs, whatever it may be. So I've got a host that's out on the internet, and it's sitting there. It's not really a honeypot, but I do monitor it from a firewall log and an auth log perspective. And I wrote a script that now years ago, I got really big into doing Python scripts, Bash shell scripts, PowerShell scripts, whatever I need to do. I'm not a programmer. I never claimed to be a programmer, but scripting is something you need to do, be able to do, to be able to process some of this data quickly. So I decided that for this episode of Sleepless in Cyber, I wanted to do something that if you are a security professional or if you're a CISO and you have an opportunity to do some of this monitoring, here are some quick and easy ways that you can do this. Now, with ChatGPT and other LLMs, this becomes really, really simple. You know, when I started doing Bash shell scripting years and years ago, I started in Perl. And I learned Perl to build websites and things. Well, I guess first I learned Java, and then I learned Perl. And then I've picked up a little bit of Python and things. But really, I just do stuff at the command line. So I got pretty comfortable with doing Bash shell scripts. And it's fun. It's fun to be able to write a one-liner that does all kinds of different things, and it spits out some data to you. But nowadays, you don't really have to go and learn that. If you're careful, then you can use an LLM to help you build these scripts to be able to run them. So for the fun of it, for this episode, I decided that I was going to pull a Bash shell script straight from ChatGPT. Now, this is in a test environment on one of my servers. If you're going to do this in your environment, make sure you go through your change management process. Do not just take something off of ChatGPT, especially if you don't know what it's doing, and run it. You need to practice it. You need to research what the commands are and make sure it's doing what you're doing, doing what you need it to do. But here is the command line that I asked it for. And I'll just read it off to you. I need a command line that will tell the last 500 lines of auth.log, pull the IPs, and give me geolocation for those IPs. And it thought for a second, and it spit out a line. And I will, I'll take a copy of this line and I'll stick it on the screen somewhere so you can see. It's kind of obnoxious, which is what you get when you start asking for things like this. But it does make a lot of sense when you read through it. Now, I'm not going to get into the actual the shell script of it, because that's really not important. But what I am going to do is I'm going to tell you what I found. So what I did is I took that shell script and I threw it onto my Linux box, one of my Linux web servers that's out there. And I told it to pull it, and it pulled it a whole bunch of information on there, and it wasn't as useful as it could be, so I did a little bit more filtering. So I added to it, number one, I grepped for country. So I only want to show lines that have a country in it. And then I did a cut, a sort, and a unique on it. So I cut it for a delimiter of a comma, and then I pulled field 2. I sorted it, and then I uniqued it. And then what it gave me is actually pretty interesting. So what I have in front of me is the list of countries that the quote attacks are coming from. And really what this means is a host is trying to log into my server with root or some other user account, and it's failing. But it's interesting to me to watch kind of the flow. Where are these coming from? So I'm going to run it again. So it takes it just a second to run. This is not a powerful server, and it is pulling 500 lines and processing them. So right now I have, it looks like most of the attacks that are coming in from Vietnam. So someone in Vietnam. Now I could do some sorting to see if it's the same IP address or the same bank of IP addresses. Right now I'm just looking for the country. And I got, most of them are coming from Vietnam. The second one is coming from the Netherlands. I've got a lot coming from Germany, from the United Kingdom. Let me run it again, see if those things change. And this is the interesting thing, because you could do this with 10,000 lines and get a broader picture. I'm just pulling a sample of the logs, just seeing who's hitting my host out there. Vietnam is coming up again. So the same kind of numbers in terms of, and of course they're coming in really fast. Now, as a CISO, I'm thinking about this from a point of view of what do I need to do to protect my organization? And of course, the first thing that most people would say is to block it by geolocation. And I would agree with you. Now, I have this particular host up so that I can do things like this, so I can see what's happening out there. And it's just a basic web server, nothing special on it, but it gives me an idea of the attacks that are coming in. Now, absolutely, you could pull this from a SIM. You could pull this from a variety of tools. What I like about this is it gets me into the data. Sometimes prepackaged reports out of a SIM or out of other tools, they give you data, but it's not really information. I can look through the data and I can put it together in a way that makes sense to me, thus converting it from data to information. And if I can do that, even on a small scale, then I can scale it up to a much larger perspective. And I really think that's important, because I want to know what's happening. Now, as a CISO, I'm probably not going to be the one running this. Maybe it's one of my staff members or my security analysts, and that's okay. But the same rules apply. I want them to be able to do this stuff in effectively a manual, small scale way, so that they understand from a big picture what the big tools are saying. So I could go in and say, okay, well, let's say I take it a little bit further. I take this scan here that's doing tailing the auth log, and I look for everything from Vietnam. And then I start looking at different IPs. Is it different IPs? Is it the same IP address? What ports are they hitting? What user accounts are they hitting? When they're trying to log in as root, well, that's very common. Change your root user account to be something else, so that's not the one they're using. If you have a unique username for your root password or your root account, and then that's the one that they're hitting, well, that's interesting to me. That's something you might consider of, how did they know that username was the one that is root? Did they find it some way? Is there a vulnerability that gave them the ability to see what that user ID is named, and now they're attacking that? So you're taking some information that you're finding in your logs, and then you're turning that around into good decision making within your own processes. So that's really important to me. I really don't like it when somebody comes in and all you do is give them a tool and just let them pull those reports and then try to make decisions out of them. Sometimes they don't even know how those reports are even gathered. They don't know what the data is on it. They don't know where the source of that data is. I like getting into a very micro level, teaching someone so they understand what these things do and how the logs work before we get into a macro level from a report level. Now, what do I do with this? Well, it's pretty simple. I mean, I'm going to continue watching it, and if as you watch this every day, and here I'm going to run it again. As you watch this every day, you get an idea of the kinds of attacks that are coming in. Okay, so Vietnam is still the first or the highest number of attacks. The Netherlands just came in as the number of attacks. Again, it's only capturing those 500, the last 500 logs, and the auth log is huge. It rotates off pretty quick, and it's actually really interesting if you were to count, minute by minute by minute, how many attempts are coming in. That's actually a good number to use for your metrics, to show we're getting this many attempts for failed logins every minute, every hour, every day, whatever it may be. So, again, interesting information. I like seeing what those attacks are like. I like seeing those processes that the attackers are using and how they change over time. So, seeing this as Vietnam, eventually it'll probably, the ebb and flow of attacks will go back to Russia. Sometimes it comes in from Singapore. Sometimes it comes in from the United States, honestly. So you can see those ebbs and flows. Now, what some people do is they'll take something like this in terms of what I'm doing, and they'll do it over a very long period of time. And of course, it does give you it gives you a larger sample, of course, and you can pull different kinds of information from that. I like doing smaller samples, quick and easy, that I can just SSH into the box, pull the data, and of course, this is all saved in my history, so I don't even have to remember the commands all that much. Anyway, again, another small session for Sleepless. This is something that I think people should do. They should regularly run these sorts of commands in their environment just to see what's going on. If you don't know what's happening in your environment, there's no way you can be effective security. I ask this when I do bank audits or I do all kinds of different sorts of audits, but when I'm in there, I will ask them, what kind of attacks do you see on a regular basis? And many times they don't know. No one actually goes in and looks in their logs. They don't have sensors. I always had a Raspberry Pi sensor. I had 4 or 5 of them around, but I had one of them on the outside of the firewall, so I could just see this. And it's really important to know what kinds of these attacks, because if you don't know the attacks, how can you put defenses in place? So anyway, thanks for joining me tonight. I hope this is useful. Let me know if you have any questions. Thanks.